At night, you meet the version of yourself you keep postponing. He appears when the room is quiet, when the noise finally stops, when there is nothing left between you and your own thoughts. And for a few minutes, you can see him clearly. Calmer, more disciplined, financially stable, focused, respected. A man who keeps his word instead of negotiating with himself every morning. You imagine what life would feel like if your mind stopped pulling against your own future. Then morning comes, and somehow the same habits return, the same distractions, the same impulses, the same emotional loops that quietly keep your life exactly where it is. This is the truth most people avoid. They do not lack desire, they lack alignment. They say they want wealth, but repeat emotional spending. They say they want peace, but feed themselves noise from the moment they wake up. They say they want discipline, but obey comfort every time discomfort appears. And after enough repetition, people begin mistaking fantasy for progress. But your life does not respond to what you wish for occasionally. It responds to what you practice consistently. That is why Stoicism still matters. Not because it promises magic, because it teaches self-command. It teaches you how to stop being ruled by impulse, distraction, comparison, emotional chaos, and the constant need for comfort. And once that changes, your life changes with it. In this video, we are going through 10 Stoic rules that can help you build wealth, discipline, clarity, emotional stability, and real self-respect. Not by forcing the world to obey you, but by making your actions finally match the future you keep imagining. One of these rules will probably expose the exact pattern that has been draining your focus, your confidence, or your momentum for years. And once you see that pattern clearly, it becomes much harder to keep pretending it is not costing you your future. If you recognize the gap between the life you want and the habits you keep repeating, leave a like now. Not as a favor, as a signal that for the next few minutes, you are willing to look at yourself honestly instead of escaping into distraction. Because the first rule begins with the thing most people never learn to control: desire itself. Rule number 1, govern desire before it governs you. Most people think desire is automatically good. It is not. Desire can become direction, but it can also become dependency. And when a man becomes emotionally dependent on what he wants, his judgment starts collapsing around it. He becomes impatient, reactive, impulsive, easy to manipulate. A man says he wants wealth, but every stressful week becomes an excuse to spend emotionally. Another says he wants peace, but cannot sit alone with his own thoughts for 10 minutes without reaching for stimulation. This is why Stoicism never teaches blind ambition. It teaches disciplined ambition. Wanting success is not the problem. Worshipping success until your emotions depend on it is the problem. Because desperate people rarely think clearly. They chase shortcuts. They compare constantly. They abandon long-term goals for short-term relief. They confuse emotional intensity with commitment, and eventually they become servants to their impulses while still calling themselves ambitious. Stoicism interrupts that pattern with one uncomfortable question. Do your habits actually serve what you say you want? Here is a practical exercise. Take a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns. On one side, write, "What I say I want." On the other side, write, "What my last 7 days prove I want." Be honest. If you say you want focus, but your attention belongs to your phone from morning until midnight, your habits are telling the truth more loudly than your goals are. If you say you want financial freedom, but your spending is emotional and unconscious, then desire alone is not leading your life. Impulse is. This exercise is difficult because it removes fantasy and replaces it with evidence. But that is exactly why it works. One sentence matters here. Your future is shaped less by what inspires you and more by what repeatedly controls your behavior. And once you see that clearly, you stop asking life for different results while protecting the same destructive patterns. That realization leads directly into the second rule. Because wanting the prize means nothing if you have not built the character capable of carrying it. Rule number 2. Become the man who can carry the prize. Many people want the reward without preparing the nervous system required to sustain it. They imagine the money, the recognition, the freedom, the successful life. But they rarely ask the deeper question: who would I need to become to hold that life without destroying it? Stoicism forces you to confront that question honestly. Because success does not only reward character, it exposes character. A disciplined person becomes more powerful with opportunity. An undisciplined person becomes more chaotic with it. You can see this everywhere. Someone finally earns more money, but still spends impulsively because emotional habits never changed. Someone gains influence, but becomes unstable under pressure because he built ambition before emotional control. The external result arrived. The internal structure did not. That is why so many people sabotage the very future they once prayed for. Not because success is dangerous, because unprepared identity is. There is a simple but powerful shift that Stoicism teaches. Stop asking only, how do I get what I want? Start asking, what kind of person consistently deserves and sustains it? That changes ambition completely. Now the goal is not fantasy, it becomes construction. A stronger body requires consistency. Financial stability requires restraint. Respect requires reliability. Peace requires self-command. And none of those qualities appear overnight. They are trained in ordinary moments. Waking up when you said you would, finishing difficult work without negotiation, staying calm during pressure instead of reacting emotionally. Small moments build identity quietly. Here is a practical exercise. Choose one major goal and finish this sentence honestly. The version of me capable of sustaining this life would need to become someone who. Then complete it. Controls impulse, protects attention, keeps promises, acts without constant validation, stays disciplined even when emotion changes. That exercise matters because it shifts your focus away from fantasy and back toward responsibility. And responsibility creates self-respect. One sentence deserves to stay with you. Your future does not need a more excited version of you. It needs a more reliable one. Because reliability creates something motivation never can: self-trust. And the fastest place to lose or rebuild that self-trust is in the very beginning of your day. Which brings us to the third rule. Rule number 3. Own the first hour. Most people lose control of their attention before they even leave bed. The alarm rings, and within seconds, the mind belongs to the world. Messages, notifications, news, other people's opinions, other people's urgency. Before a man has spoken to himself, the world is already speaking for him. And then he wonders why he feels mentally scattered by noon. Stoicism treats attention as something sacred. Because attention becomes direction over time. What repeatedly enters your mind eventually shapes your emotional state, your decisions, and your habits. If your mornings begin in reaction, your day usually follows the same pattern. That is why the first hour matters so much. Not because you need some perfect 5-hour morning routine designed for social media. The goal is simpler. Begin the day in command instead of in surrender. A calm beginning changes the emotional tone of everything that follows. You become less reactive, less impulsive, more deliberate, more capable of staying focused when discomfort appears. And the opposite is also true. A distracted morning creates emotional momentum toward more distraction. There is a scene that repeats itself every day. Someone wakes up tired, scrolls immediately, absorbs anxiety and comparison before sunrise, then spends the rest of the day trying to recover mentally from a state they created in the first 10 minutes. That is not bad luck. That is unprotected attention. Here is the practical challenge. For the next 24 hours, protect the first 30 minutes after waking up. No phone. Instead, drink water. Sit in silence for a few minutes. Write down the 3 most important tasks of the day. Move your body briefly. Let your own thoughts arrive before the world enters your mind. At first, this feels uncomfortable. That discomfort reveals something important. Many people are not addicted only to stimulation. They are addicted to avoiding themselves. Silence removes escape routes, and once you can sit with yourself calmly, your decisions begin changing in powerful ways. One sentence matters here. If you do not decide what deserves your attention early in the day, distraction will decide for you. That is why Stoicism begins with inner order before external achievement. Because a distracted mind can desire success endlessly while still building chaos every day. And nowhere is that chaos more visible than in the way people handle money. Which leads directly into the 4th rule. Rule number 4. Treat money as a mirror, not a master. Money reveals character faster than most people realize. It exposes impatience, impulse, avoidance, insecurity, the need to impress. And because people rarely examine the emotional side of money, they keep repeating the same financial patterns while blaming circumstances alone. Stoicism does not teach you to reject wealth. Money can create freedom, stability, opportunity, and dignity. But the Stoics also understood that the moment money becomes emotional identity, it starts controlling you. That is why some people earn more and still feel trapped. Their income changed, their habits did not. A man spends emotionally after stressful days because buying something creates temporary relief. Another avoids checking his finances because numbers force him to confront reality. Neither problem is truly about money. Both are about self-command. This is where Stoicism becomes practical. Before trying to become wealthy, become conscious. Conscious of what you spend, why you spend, what emotions are driving your decisions. Because financial chaos usually begins with unconscious repetition. Small leaks repeated for years. Impulse purchases, lifestyle inflation, subscriptions ignored. Spending used to regulate emotion instead of solve problems. Then people wonder why they feel anxious despite working constantly. Here is a practical exercise. Set aside one financial truth hour this week. No distractions, no excuses, no performance. Look honestly at your spending, debt, recurring expenses, and emotional purchases. Not to shame yourself, to regain clarity, because clarity restores power. One of the most dangerous habits is spending to maintain an image that your nervous system cannot actually sustain. People buy status to hide instability, convenience to avoid discipline, stimulation to escape emptiness. But Stoicism asks a harder question. What if real wealth begins when you stop needing purchases to control your emotions? That question changes behavior. You become slower before impulse, more patient, more deliberate, less interested in looking successful, and more interested in becoming stable. And stability creates something far more valuable than temporary excitement: peace. One sentence deserves attention. A person who cannot govern small appetites will eventually be governed by larger consequences. That is why Stoic wealth is not built only through earning more. It is built through becoming harder to control emotionally. And the fastest way to strengthen that emotional control is through discomfort. Which brings us to the fifth rule. Rule number 5. Train with discomfort. Most people are not destroyed by difficulty. They are destroyed by their habit of escaping difficulty immediately. The moment discomfort appears, they reach for relief. A distraction, a snack, a purchase, a delay, an excuse. And after enough repetition, the mind learns a dangerous pattern. When pressure appears, retreat. That pattern quietly weakens every part of life. Focus weakens. Discipline weakens. Confidence weakens. Because confidence is not built by avoiding discomfort. It is built by surviving discomfort without abandoning yourself. This is why Stoicism treats controlled discomfort as training, not punishment, training. The Stoics understood that a man who never practices difficulty becomes fragile the moment life stops being convenient. And modern life constantly rewards fragility. Everything is designed to remove friction. Fast entertainment, fast food, fast stimulation, fast escape from boredom. So when real progress demands patience and effort, many people unconsciously interpret discomfort as a sign they should stop. But often, discomfort is proof that growth has finally started. You can see this clearly in ordinary moments. A man sits down to work seriously for an hour. 10 minutes later, his mind suddenly wants to check messages, clean the room, open another tab, or do literally anything easier than remaining focused. The problem is not laziness. The problem is untrained discomfort tolerance. Here is the practical challenge. Choose one controlled discomfort every day this week. A hard workout, a difficult conversation, a focused hour without distraction, delaying an unnecessary purchase, sitting in silence instead of numbing yourself immediately. Small acts matter because they retrain identity. Every time you remain steady instead of escaping, you send yourself a new message. I can act even when comfort disappears. That sentence changes people, because eventually you stop needing perfect emotional conditions in order to move. And one realization becomes impossible to ignore. The life you want is often hidden behind the discomfort you keep avoiding. That is the turning point. Not becoming fearless, becoming less controlled by avoidance. And once that happens, another pattern becomes visible very quickly. Many people would rather talk about change than create evidence of it, which leads directly into the sixth rule. Rule number 6. Speak less, prove more. Talking about change can become a form of escape. A man says he is going to get disciplined, going to save money, going to start the business, going to rebuild his life. And sometimes, speaking about the future creates enough emotional satisfaction that action never follows. The mind feels progress before progress exists. Stoicism cuts through this illusion quickly. Your future is shaped far more by repeated behavior than by emotional declarations. That is why some people stay trapped for years while still sounding ambitious. They are addicted to potential, not practice. There is an uncomfortable question worth asking yourself. Are you building your future, or using the idea of your future to escape dissatisfaction with your present? Many people never answer that honestly. They stay emotionally attached to the image of becoming someone impressive, while avoiding the ordinary actions required to become him. And over time, something dangerous happens. Every broken promise weakens self-trust. The mind notices when you repeatedly say things you do not follow through on. That is why some people feel exhausted before they even begin. Deep down, they no longer fully believe themselves. Stoicism restores that trust through evidence, quiet evidence, completed actions, kept promises, consistent habits repeated without performance. A disciplined person usually speaks differently. Less announcing, less explaining, less emotional storytelling about the future. More action. Because action creates internal stability in a way fantasy never can. Here is the practical challenge. For the next 7 days, choose one area where you speak more than you execute. Then, stop announcing. Replace one declaration with one completed action. Quietly. No performance, no validation, no need for applause. Just evidence. One completed action rebuilds self-respect faster than 10 motivational speeches to yourself. And one sentence matters deeply here. The future does not trust what you say. It trusts what you repeat. That is why Stoicism values consistency over intensity. Intensity fades quickly. Consistency changes identity. Now pause for a moment and tell me honestly in the comments, which pattern has been costing you the most lately? Distraction, emotional spending, comfort addiction, overthinking, or talking more than acting? Do not choose the most impressive answer. Choose the truest one. Because the next rule explains why changing your life becomes almost impossible if your environment keeps rewarding your weaker self. Rule number 7. Choose your influences carefully. Most influence is quiet. It happens through repetition, repeated conversations, repeated attitudes, repeated environments that slowly train your standards without you noticing. That is why your inner circle matters so much. Not because other people control your destiny, because human beings absorb emotional climates constantly. Spend enough time around distraction, and focus begins to feel unnatural. Spend enough time around people who avoid responsibility, and your own excuses start sounding reasonable. This is not arrogance, it is conditioning. And today, your environment is not only physical. It includes what you watch, who you follow, what voices enter your mind every day. Some influences do not destroy your life dramatically. They simply normalize your weaker self long enough for you to lower your standards. That is the real danger. A man says he wants discipline, but every environment around him rewards impulse and distraction. Another says he wants peace, but consumes outrage and comparison all day long. Then both wonder why their minds feel unstable. Stoicism teaches intentional proximity, not isolation, not paranoia, intentionality. You do not need to hate people to recognize that certain environments drain your clarity, your ambition, or your emotional control. And you do not need everyone's approval to protect your future. Here is a practical exercise. Write down 3 categories: people who sharpen me, people who drain me, people I perform for. That last category matters more than most realize. Many people exhaust themselves trying to maintain an identity around people whose approval they secretly fear losing. So they stay smaller, less disciplined, less honest, less ambitious. Stoicism breaks that pattern by teaching inner authority. A grounded person stops building his life around applause. He starts building around principles. And one sentence deserves attention. Your environment may not decide your future, but it heavily influences which version of yourself feels normal. Choose carefully, because eventually your standards either rise toward your vision or fall toward your surroundings. And one of the fastest ways people lower those standards is through comparison, which is why the 8th rule matters so much. Rule number 8. Turn envy into instruction. Most people handle envy in one of 2 ways. They either deny it or drown in it. Someone becomes more successful, more disciplined, more confident, more financially free, and instead of learning from the feeling, people move toward bitterness or self-rejection. But Stoicism offers a different response. It treats envy as information, because envy often reveals something important, not only what you admire in others, but what you have neglected in yourself. If someone's discipline affects you emotionally, maybe part of you is tired of your own inconsistency. If someone's peace unsettles you, maybe your life has become too noisy and reactive. If someone's financial freedom triggers frustration, maybe you are grieving the years lost to distraction or impulse. That realization changes comparison completely. Now envy stops being poison. It becomes instruction. There is a question Stoicism forces you to ask. What price did this person pay that I have been unwilling to pay? Because people usually envy the outcome while ignoring the structure underneath it. They envy the body, but not the training, the confidence, but not the discomfort, the business, but not the years of uncertainty, the peace, but not the discipline required to protect it. Modern life makes this worse because everyone sees polished results, while almost nobody sees repetition, boredom, sacrifice, or doubt. So comparison becomes distorted. You compare your private struggles to someone else's edited surface. Then your motivation collapses before discipline even begins. Stoicism pulls you back into reality. Another person's success is not evidence that life forgot you. It is evidence of what sustained behavior can create over time. Here is the practical exercise. The next time envy appears, pause and write this. I envy this because I value blank. Then complete the second sentence. One honorable action I can take toward it today is blank. That final part matters, because envy without action becomes resentment. Envy transformed into direction becomes fuel. And one sentence deserves to stay with you. The goal is not to want another person's life. The goal is to understand what your reaction to their life is trying to teach you. That lesson creates maturity. You stop wasting energy resenting people. You stop collapsing emotionally every time someone moves ahead of you. And slowly, your attention returns to the only life you can actually build, your own. But there is still one illusion that keeps many people asleep for years. The illusion that they still have endless time, which leads directly into the 9th rule. Rule number 9. Remember what is temporary. Most people live as if there will always be more time. More time to get serious. More time to repair the relationship. More time to take care of their health. More time to become disciplined later. And because the mind assumes tomorrow is guaranteed, urgency disappears. Days become automatic. Then years disappear quietly. Stoicism interrupts this illusion through a practice often misunderstood: negative visualization. This does not mean becoming pessimistic or obsessed with disaster. It means remembering that life is fragile, so you stop treating it carelessly. A healthy body can weaken. An opportunity can close. A parent can age faster than you expected. A distracted decade can vanish before you realize how much time you wasted emotionally asleep. That awareness changes behavior, because when permanence stops being assumed, attention sharpens. People become more present, more disciplined, more grateful, more careful with how they spend their days. There is a scene many people recognize too late. A man keeps delaying change because he believes there will always be another season to become serious. Then life changes. An opportunity disappears. His health declines. Someone important leaves. And suddenly he realizes the cost was never one dramatic mistake. It was unconscious postponement repeated for years. Stoicism tries to prevent that regret before it arrives. Not through fear, through perspective. Here is a practical exercise. Once this week, sit quietly and ask yourself, what am I taking for granted right now that deserves better protection, attention, or gratitude? Do not rush the answer. Maybe it is your health, your attention, your time, your finances, someone you love. This exercise matters because gratitude becomes deeper when entitlement disappears. And one sentence deserves attention. Mortality is not meant to make you afraid of life. It is meant to make you stop wasting it. That is the hidden purpose of this rule. Not darkness, precision. Because once you truly understand that time is limited, you stop wanting constant distraction from life. You start wanting a life you can actually respect. And that leads into the final rule, the one that ties every other principle together. Rule number 10. Attach yourself to the standard, not the outcome. This is one of the deepest ideas in Stoicism, and one of the most misunderstood. Detachment does not mean becoming emotionless. It does not mean pretending results do not matter. Results matter. Money matters. Health matters. Relationships matter. Success matters. But Stoicism teaches that your emotional stability cannot depend entirely on outcomes you do not fully control. Because the moment your identity depends on immediate results, your peace becomes fragile. Every delay feels like failure. Every rejection feels personal. Every obstacle feels humiliating. And eventually, fear starts controlling behavior. People quit too early because progress is slow. They panic when reality does not reward effort immediately. They abandon discipline the moment emotion changes. Stoicism restores stability by shifting attention toward standards. Did I act with discipline today? Did I protect my attention? Did I remain honest under pressure? Did I follow through? These questions matter because they return your focus to what actually belongs to you: your conduct, your effort, your consistency, not every outcome. There is a major difference between wanting success and needing success to feel worthy. One creates discipline, the other creates emotional desperation. And desperate people lose clarity quickly. There is a scene that explains this perfectly. Two men begin the same journey. Both want success. Both feel motivated in the beginning. But after several months, visible results are still slow. The first man becomes emotional. He changes direction constantly. He loses discipline every time progress feels invisible. The second man stays attached to standards. He keeps improving his habits. He keeps showing up. He adjusts intelligently when needed, but he does not abandon himself emotionally just because reward is delayed. Years later, the difference between them becomes enormous, not because one wanted success more, because one learned steadiness. That is the real power Stoicism offers. Not domination over the world, governance over yourself. Here is the practical exercise. Every evening, ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I honor my standard today? Where did I abandon it? What will I correct tomorrow? Not with self-hatred, with honesty. Because honest self-observation creates growth far faster than emotional self-punishment. And one sentence deserves to stay with you long after this video ends. A strong life is not built by controlling every outcome. It is built by refusing to abandon your principles while outcomes are still uncertain. That is where calm confidence comes from. Not from knowing life will always go your way, from knowing you can trust yourself even when it does not. Now step back and look at what these rules are really building together. This was never about magic, and it was never about pretending the universe will reward you simply because you want something badly enough. Stoicism offers something more difficult and far more powerful. Alignment. You stop saying one thing while practicing another. You stop demanding a better future while protecting the habits destroying it. That is the real meaning of manifestation through a Stoic mind. Your life moves in the direction of what you repeatedly reinforce. If you reinforce distraction, your life becomes scattered. If you reinforce discipline, your life becomes stable. If you reinforce impulse, your future becomes fragile. If you reinforce clarity, restraint, and self-command, your life begins changing quietly from the inside out. That is why small actions matter so much. One protected morning, one controlled impulse, one honest financial decision, one difficult conversation handled calmly, one promise kept when nobody was watching. Repeated long enough, those moments become identity, and identity changes destiny more reliably than motivation ever will. Stoicism is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming conscious. Conscious of your patterns, conscious of your excuses, conscious of the ways you have been unconsciously training yourself away from the life you claim to want. Because once awareness becomes honest, responsibility becomes unavoidable. And responsibility, accepted willingly, becomes freedom.